Okay, I think we're live now on YouTube. You can share the YouTube link with other people if they don't want to be participating here on the Zoom with us. I'm just gonna post the link here. Okay, so the right link is actually the one before mine. I don't think mine is the same. Yeah, okay. All right, so the YouTube is working. So welcome all of you, the people who are here with us on Zoom and people watching us on YouTube. And afterwards, the link will be available on YouTube too, so you can watch it later, this discussion. My name is Raphael. I'm going to be the moderator of this panel discussion for the documentary Seeding Change, directed by Richard Yalen. And to discuss the film with us, we have three different scientists that are doing their research in different areas too, but we're all in the same ecology, biodiversity, and sustainability. So first we have Loic Gillerot from the University of Ghent. Then we have Claudia Parra from the Free University of Amsterdam. They're both PhD students, and they will talk more about their own research. And we have Daphiny too, and she will also introduce herself. So I will leave it free for Loic first, so he can introduce himself and give a little bit of his background to the people.
Hello. Hi, Rafa. Thanks for inviting me. So I'm Loic Gillerot. I'm doing a PhD at the University of Ghent and the University of Leuven in Belgium. My research deals with the effects of forest biodiversity on human health. So there's this part of my PhD. It's a very broad topic, very wide-ranging, and within this topic, I'm focusing on thermal comfort and what forest biodiversity can do to improve thermal comfort, especially during heat waves. And I have some previous experience on biodiversity within Europe, but I also worked, I did field work in Kenya and Brazil, and last year also in Switzerland on drought tolerance of forest ecosystems. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Loic. So I'll ask Claudia now to introduce herself. Please, Claudia.
Hello, everyone, and thank you to the organizers for the invitation. Well, my name is Claudia, and I do my PhD in the sustainability of production and trade of forest risk commodities. So basically what I do is try to make an assessment of the sustainability of the production of these crops, like just to ring the bell, crops like soybean, like oil palm, cocoa, coffee that are traded at a global scale. And that the expansion has happened at the coast of the tropical forests. And I try to bridge the understanding between the government and the private sector, and also trying to account for the consequences for rural communities. So actually this film really touches the topic of my research. So I'm looking forward to discuss this with you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Claudia. I wanted to talk about Sarah because Sarah was one of our panelists too today, but she had a health problem, so she couldn't be able to participate with us today. So now I'll ask Daphiny. So please, Daphiny, the floor is yours. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, sorry, we are driving here. Sunny day in the UK. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I was about only to listen, then Glycom invited me for the discussion as a panelist. I have a background in material science and engineering and worked 4 years for the eco sailboat of the Federal University of Santa Catarina, and had the opportunity to write projects more in the blue biodiversity of the Brazilian seas, the blue Amazon, actually, they call. We got even, some small projects, and we were selected for the Petrobras Socioambiental. But they didn't hire because of the lockdown, the COVID. But yes, I have more of this background in materials than in biodiversity. But I worked very close to marine biologists and environmentalists, NGOs in Brazil, working with the blue Amazon biodiversity, I would say. Okay, thank you for having me. And let's enjoy the conversation. See you.
Thank you, Daphiny. So these three panelists, along with me, will be the ones hosting this event today. So I'll present myself a little bit. I'm a PhD student. I'm also a Marie Curie Fellow from the University of Turin. And my research is on agricultural heritage systems, and I work with assessment of abiotic ecosystem services on these agricultural heritage systems. So to start discussing the documentary, I would like to introduce with this quote that is right on the film poster. The quote is from Paul Hawking, one of the people who actually is part of the documentary, and then he's saying many different stuff along the documentary. But the main sentence and the sentence that starts the film is the climate change isn't a science problem, it's a human problem. So who would like to start? And I'd like us to discuss this a little bit, this sentence. What do you guys think? So Claudia, would you like to start?
Yes, I guess that this phrase refers to all the debates that at a political level has been happening about climate change and how it's been questioned, right, by politicians, the validity of the finding. And of course, I cannot agree more that it's, I think science has shown enough the importance of climate change and how it's linked, it's caused by humans. But I do think there is an important thing to highlight here that I always discuss with my PhD, with other research colleagues, is that science can be very powerful, but for the kind of things we can demonstrate with data, but it also, the way we communicate our results, I think we have a long way to learn, because as a scientist, we are used to use a lot of nuance. So if you look at the IPCC report, for instance, there is always the declaration of how high is the probability of certain data backed up by science, right? And this has been used to manipulate the importance of climate change and the link with humans. So I do think, like in my field as well, because we try to really disentangle all the causes of, in my case, how unsustainable can be international trade. I think the way we communicate is very important, and we have to work more together with the stakeholders and the people actually doing the changes, including the private sector, to learn how to communicate and to reach the changes we are searching for.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Loic, would you like to, you have thoughts on this subject? What do you think of the quote?
Yeah, sure. A little thought about it. I definitely agree with the quote, with the idea that there is now so much science since multiple decades that backs up the idea that climate is changing and that this will be problematic for us as a species, and that it's all about the application now, which is severely lagging behind the science. And this application is, of course, depending on the human component. And something I read multiple times now, I don't remember the sources, but was something interesting is that they said that even scientists or more specifically climate scientists fail to grasp psychologically just how bad the climate and biodiversity crisis actually are. So even those who are having all of their, well, working with the subject, well, there is this psychological component, this very humane component that is even limiting us and scientists likewise in really grasping how important it is. So it's totally understandable that this human component is lagging behind the science component.
Thank you, Loic. Daphne, would you like to say something about this quote?
Yeah, just a quick something. When I heard the author said, I respect their work, the natural capitalism, but I thought about, we are so disconnected as humans and scientists that we believe that science is not a human thing. When he quotes that climate change is a human problem, science is also a human thing, and it's also a human problem to understand and to, it's only this kind of reflection that we as scientists, we have this kind of idea that we do even us in physical sciences, we have a component of the human factor behind. So yeah, interesting. Only for us, for everybody here. And I did my PhD in Torino as a Marie Curie, by the way, to the people in Turin. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Daphne. I also agree, and I think this last point that Daphne made about how the quote more or less tried to separate these two, like if science was something apart from humans. It's interesting because when you think about it, so we're all just one thing. So I think it's a funny quote in this point of view, but it's also important that we're not just relying on scientists to handle all of this climate changing and all of these things that we just think are scientific problems, when in fact are all they belong to all of us. We are the ones causing it, and we are the ones responsible to solve it. And just to follow this approach, I would like to talk about the vote with a dollar, which is one of the aspects or one of the approaches that they propose during the film. There's a bit of noise here. Just a second. So, guys, I'm back. Just before we go into this new one, I would like to answer one of the questions from the Q&A. Of course, you can send your Q&A questions whenever you want here. You can also use the comments on the YouTube live streaming. So the question was from Julia. She's asking if we could explain a bit how this discussion structure is supposed to be among you, or then we ask at the end, or we can already ask questions or comments. So you're free to ask any questions throughout the whole streaming. You can also, if you don't have any question, but you just want to comment on one of the questions I made, you can also just send us the comment here. So don't worry, you're free to participate anytime you like. Just send us the questions on the Q&A on the YouTube comments. All right. So going into vote with a dollar. So vote with a dollar is this thought that we're not relying only on politicians to actually make this effective changes towards, especially here, climate change and consumerism, but in fact we will support companies or institutions that are actually doing something in favor of the environment or have sustainability approaches. So instead of just voting for these politicians who are always a lot of talk, but most of the time they're not doing anything about it, we will use our own money and the economy to support these companies and support these institutions in order for them to prevail and to elevate the concept of sustainability. So this is the vote with a dollar. It's called dollar because it's a North American documentary, but you can think about any currency that it could be in any country, of course. So I would like you, Daphne, what do you think of this approach of vote with a dollar and how we can link it with the vote we had before?
Yeah, I really agree with this approach. I think it's a good way to think about how we can change as individuals, I think it's happening really. Lots of people are getting more aware how we spend our money and which companies we put, we support. So yeah, my contribution is I'm a very optimistic person. And I think, for example, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in Circular Economy, if you see the list of companies and big companies, IKEA, I don't know, Coca-Cola, and is increasing the companies that are, are more committed to this kind of change. So, yes, I don't know if I contribute with this. Yeah.
All right, Daphne, thank you. So Loic, what do you think of this approach of vote with a dollar?
Yeah, I don't agree entirely. So I mostly don't agree with how one-sided it is proposed in the documentary. So first of all, the problem is that you put a lot of responsibility only with the consumers, and you assume that the consumers are perfectly aware, perfectly informed, and that they will buy the best products according to this information that they have. But that is, first of all, not how it works. And I think it always has to be seen in a two-sided way. So of course, buying certain products will stimulate this branch of the economy. But I also think that at the other side, both companies need to take their own responsibility, and there needs to be some regulation top-down from governments. And I also don't think you can just trust companies to do these things on their own. Daphne mentioned the example of Coca-Cola, but I read just last week how Coca-Cola is really great in giving themselves a green image. For example, they compared how their marketing strategy was to announce these big actions on recycling plastic, and this decade we will recycle 50% of all of the plastic that we produce, etc. And they have, of course, huge budgets to support this. But then they compared these marketing campaigns over the years, and then they compared it to the numbers, and consistently every time that Coca-Cola announced such a big action, they always failed completely to meet their targets. But this, of course, they will never announce it or disseminate it to the big public. So I wouldn't place any trust in those big companies. They need to be both regulated, they need to take their responsibility, and of course, if additional to that, the consumers are informed, then you will maximize the impact. But just saying your dollar is a vote and that's how we will solve everything, I disagree quite strongly with that statement.
All right, thank you, Loic. Very interesting thought about the subject. So Daphiny wants to reply. So I will leave the floor open to Daphiny so she can say something extra.
Yeah, regarding this, it's very known that regarding renewable energies, for example, we don't have a single answer, of course. I don't think the director or people, praising this dollar thing, they are expecting that is the only solution. Because, everybody knows that there has to be laws in place. Economical pressure is a big thing, because people that support this government think we forget that who is in power, what is in power, what is the government supporting, what kind of, but they have to respond to the citizens. The tricky part, the paradox of this, waiting for a top-down kind of answer is not really going to happen without a big, change in the way we consume things, because the top there, unfortunately, is very much obedient to the companies that we are supposed to regulate. So it's a funny thing. I think, we have to work together with governments and, votes and things, but only that, not only one thing. You can't, change really. I believe very strongly in a civil kind of revolutioning with the way we consume things, because it goes back, it's circular in a way. That's also for reflecting, it's something I don't totally support, all this responsibility in the individual. Of course, we are a society, we are multiple, but I don't believe only the regular expecting for the governments and the big companies. It's a big discussion. I did research in oil and renewables, expecting for the regulation and believing that the regulation that the big companies are ruling is a very a kind of a naive thing as well. Both sides, if you only rely on consumers to respond, to be responsible for that, but only relying governments to take the action, is also a bit of a naive thing. Is my point of view, but open to.
All right, thank you, Daphiny. And I kind of agree with both of you, because for me, I think it's important that you actually perform certain actions in prone to the sustainability approach. but you cannot only rely on consumers, and you need to make these companies and make these institutions responsible for their actions. And of course, we need these regulations. So, but the problem is that the documentary is such one-sided that it's hard for you to have insights about other approaches, because they're only showing what they can do in terms of how the companies that are presented throughout the documentary are performing their actions and initiatives. So I think that's why. And for me, there's also this complication with because sometimes it feels like the documentary is made for people for economic developing countries, and not actually for economic developing countries, because you can expect that people from these other countries have enough capital to buy certain products, because these products are actually very expensive. And when you have green labels or eco labels or different sustainability labels, and sometimes these products are not even not only affordable, but they're not even available for these other countries to consume. So it's a bit tricky in this sense how the documentary is portraying these people and these consumers. So I'll leave it to Claudia now. So she wants to give an insight, and then I'll go back to Daphne. And Julia also made another comment that I want to read, or if she wants to go live with us and say it, you're also welcome, Julia. So Claudia, please.
Yeah, so this statement is really at the core of my research. I have a lot to say, actually, and I mainly disagree. Two reasons that you already mentioned. Like, first of all, of course, we cannot assume that information is everywhere. And second, access to these dollars is not equal, right? Like, to make this statement to work, we assume that everybody has these dollars to work, and that is not the case. Simple statistics: 9% of the population lives in extreme poverty, and almost 49% in poverty. So we are more than half of the population living in poverty. How do you expect that these consumers have the power to change these things? And to be honest, I really like and I appreciate all the initiatives that are presented in this documentary, because I do think they are necessary, but they only apply to a very narrow part of the population who have this purchasing power. And we are talking about a very Western society for which I belong. We all belong, and we are constrained by our assumption that everything in the world, it is like that. We are city-centered as citizens, and we believe that the rural area doesn't exist, while 40% of the whole population in the world lives in rural areas, has no access to education, has no access to internet, has no access to all these things we believe are obvious. And here is the link with the first question that you say, why somebody has to say this thing, that climate change is a science? It's obvious. Why are we questioning? But how many people have not even access to education to even learn to read? So I think this is an important bridge we have to do. And again, and this is where I see the failure of how the society is structured, because only some people are able to climb up the ladder, and we are there. So we should not forget in this path that we are following, that we are leaving some other people behind as a consequence of historical inequalities that are there. And something very important to mention, I really like, again, these all social entrepreneurship initiatives. I think they are very important because they create awareness. And to be able to empower governments to regulate more strongly companies, you have to create a demand for these more sustainable things. So this is the role that the social entrepreneurship examples that are shown in the documentary. But in the end, all these companies that are being created with a more meaningful goal are still constrained by the rules of the financial system and the rules of international trade, which is basically economic growth, profit, and they had to rely on economies of scale to be able to compete in the whole ecosystem of companies. So in the end, they have to generate more profit. In the end, they have to grow. And because these conflicts with the goals of being sustainable, generating also social benefits, they are condemned to remain as a luxury product for the people who can afford. And of course, in the documentary, they show they are trying to reduce the cost so the acai bowl is affordable, but affordable for what? For the people of the cities, who in the town where you need to take a flight of 1 hour and then a bus of 12 hours and then a little car of 8 hours and then walk 3 hours to reach the community. Is this going to do? And these people have very limited options about what is the consumption pattern. And they had to rely on the cheapest option possible. And here is the mass of the consumers. Like I told you, this is more than 50% of the whole population in the world living in poverty. And they had to take whatever they can reach. So the companies know this, and they are in an extreme rush to reduce the costs. And this is the whole concept. This is the whole base of the financial system. As long as we don't change this, nothing is going to change. And who has to start the change of this? It has to be a coalition of the powerful. And we have to understand better the financial system to be able to propose changes. We don't understand who are the investors of these companies. They are like ghosts. They are nowhere. We believe that Coca-Cola or Shell are the powerful, but they are just names. There are big investors behind. There are a lot of the banking system, how it's working with the speculation, with the tax havens, all these things that we don't understand, right? We come from different disciplines. We need interdisciplinary research to be able to understand really and grasp what is the problem.
Perfect, Claudia. Really like your comments. So I'll go back to Daphne, and then I'll leave the floor open for Julia. So Daphne, please.
No, Julia can start first. But I agree with the Eurocentric Western view. But I don't agree that we can solve their problem. We are like, it's not a white savior, but we also have this idea that we can save the very poor. And we have examples in Brazil that is not, the community they are getting organized. We had in Brazil periods that we didn't have people starving, of course, with the government, but very, very, very much because in the government, there were people leading social movements in the very base. So I don't think we have to underestimate, we need to, when you're starving is a different kind of point. But there are many issues to discuss on that. But Julia can go first. I'm happy to hear more interesting point of views from you.
Right, thank you. So Julia, if you want to join us, please.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, let me know if the audio is noisy because sometimes I have the fan starting. So.
Yeah, it's a bit noisy in the background.
Okay, sorry.
But
okay, let me know if it's ununderstandable, then I get assistant. First of all, thank you for organizing this. It's very interesting. It was interesting to watch the movie, and I must say I really agree a lot with Claudia. I think you raised very good points, and I really think you have very constructive comments and opinions. I got a bit lost now. The problem for me is, I think what shocked me most about the movie was, especially towards the end, a sentence that one of the guys said, that he basically said, like, don't wait for the government, or don't, it was kind of saying, like, forget about the government, we need to act on our own, and we need to be the change. And I think that was a thing that I would disagree the most with, because it's the whole point of it. Like, it's good that they show this example of businesses that were successful and they were sustainable and ethical, and they made a lot of effort into making this a model system. But the point is, you show how to do it, and you should ask people to follow you, but you cannot expect that this is the way to go. You should use this as a starting point to, as someone else said, raise awareness. But then at the same time, you have to lobby, you have to pressure politicians, you have to combine like this bottom-up approach with a top-down approach, where a political system has to create a system where every citizen can actually be a conscious consumer. Because I really don't understand how they think that just by buying few products that are very ethical and good and sustainable, you can actually make a change if you live in a system where everything you do is actually, in a way, giving money to the big polluters. For example, we live in a society where it's like everything you buy is voting, let's say, vote with your dollars. But I don't know, I try to stop flying in Europe because I think it's dumb that we take flights, but there is no system infrastructure that allows you to cheaply travel across Europe. Why flying is so much more cheaper and easier than just taking a train across two countries? And these are the things that drive me insane, because I don't want to be blamed for my choices where my choices are not really free, because I'm not that rich that I can afford to spend like 200 euros to travel from Belgium to Germany while I can fly for 20 euros. Sorry, that's totally unfair. And I think we can't go far and far enough, especially with the pressure that we have on changing climate, if we don't act collectively. We should stop being so self-centered as we do in Western societies. We think that we are all heroes. We are gonna change the world. No, we don't change the world alone. We need to change the world together. Every action matters, and I totally agree with being green and think about your choices when you eat, when you travel, how you dress up, because everything has an impact. But you need to fight to have a system where you can be green and where people that are not educated can still be green just because the system punishes what it's not sustainable. Sorry I hope I didn't take too much time. This is my comment.
No problem, Julia. You're always welcome. The others viewers are also welcome to join if they want to say something, if they just want to send a question or do you just want to participate, feel free to join us. I completely agree with what you said. And one of, you talked about the flight emissions, and one of the things on the documentary is, the documentary is also showing that all the flights that were necessary throughout the documentary, they try to make it sustainable by paying the CO2 emissions for these flights, which is one of the things you can do in order to pay for these flight emissions. Daphne, you want to say something extra?
No, I'm happy to hear yeah, let's move on if you want. But I think it's very central, the discussion about, it's the triplets, the three peg. I don't never remember. Social, economic, environment. We have to all, that's the thing, is a systematic, it's good to say that it's an interdisciplinary, but it's a very complex issue, as most of the global challenge that we are facing today. So yeah, I think all the points of view, you build the big picture for a big, for this complicated and complex solution. So yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you. So I'll move on to, so I'll just read what Julia said on the chat. So she said, I find this vote with the dollars very disturbing. First, it implies that the richer, the more powerful, louder your voice is, more dollars equal more votes. What about people that are more worried about the end of the month rather than the end of the world? Secondly, this is a clear strategy from the big polluters to the small consumers, the normal people, by blaming us and saying that we're not putting enough efforts that they can get away, so they can get away with their actions. Okay. So I'll move on to different questions now. One of the questions I wrote. So what do you think of the Sambazon role in the Amazon forest? So the documentary shows they started to work with the local communities in the upper part of the Amazon and the Rio Negro Delta. So they started to build schools. They started a community center. they started a a dynamic conservation plan in the area too, to protect against deforestation and desertification. So we saw many of the actions and initiatives that the Sambazan company was doing in that area. I wanted to know what you guys think of the products that they're selling, how they're selling the view of the company in the documentary, because sometimes it felt like the documentary was promoting a bit too much these companies. It was sort of like a big commercial. And so, Claudia, would you like to start?
Yeah, I think the link is direct with the previous questions. You know, I also had that feeling. In the end, these companies need some more buyers. You're right, and I also felt that it was like promoting their business. And in the end, they had to follow the same business models. You know, if they really want to be competitive, they have to lower the prices. And that is a problem with certification as well. Certification is not going to solve the whole world, because it just tackles a very privileged side of the society as well, who can afford all these things. So yeah, this is something I don't agree with, but I do like, although I must say I'm not an expert on acai, so I don't know how this production happens. I know these trees happen naturally in the forest, so they can harvest it, but also there are plantations. So whatever it is plantation, right? It is always controversial. At least I work with cocoa, which also grows it occurs naturally in the Amazon rainforest, but the way it is produced, because of the demand, it's still unsustainable, because the whole world is connected. So if you replace a previous land use with something, you displace this previous land use to somewhere else. And because we are used to do politics at a national level, we don't care about what's happening beyond the borders, and this is the risk. So I have a question opening for that. Maybe you, Raphael, who you're working you're from Brazil, you can explain more about this role, because like I say, if they have to also join this rush for lowering the prices, I think this is the risk again. And this is what happened with cocoa, right? Even when they try to do agroforestry systems in cocoa, for chocolate production, the productivity lowers. So you always have this controversy between it is called in the land use science land sparing versus land sharing. So what do? You increase as crazy the yields to be able to use less land, so you decrease deforestation, or you try to do it in a more environmentally friendly way, agroforestry, you have biodiversity in your fields, but then you need more area because the productivity is lower since you have shade trees on you. So this is not that easy, that straightforward answer. It always depends on everything and how also the communities are benefited from that. I would anyway add something to this, and I think it's very important to mention, it was not mentioned in the documentary, but the Convention of Biodiversity, that's how it's called, the CBD. They have this Nagoya Protocol and the Access for Genetic Resources Benefit Sharing Scheme. And I know some companies like in Brazil, Natura have been using it, but so far it's voluntary. And I really wonder how at this point, like many of these sustainability initiatives in the world are still voluntary and not they don't have a binding nature, because it should be, you know, like how can you, after all the historical things that happen, you know, all the inequality that you know that are happening in these rural areas, you cannot promote or force. Actually, yeah, force is a bit too strong, but you know, like really give more incentives or demand companies to really pay back the benefits they are using these resources, because the acai is there. Okay, it's true, I can just go and buy it at the price of the market, but the reason why this is existing is because there are communities there guarding the fact that the acai can grow and prosper there, and it has a very strong legacy of the communities there, that it has a value and it could help to develop these communities. So I do think this is something very important to promote, and it should be more part of the policies. I don't think it's very well known. You know, not many people know about these schemes, but there is a whole framework already developed. We just need to promote it more, and even companies can benefit or doing advertising with this, but I do think it will benefit rural communities a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the public policies we're having, and it's been in development that I know here in Brazil, is the payment for the ecosystem services, that you have the farmers doing their daily practices and protecting their landscape, but at the same time, the government or the even through municipalities or state government or the federal government, they have, because here in Brazil it works at different scales. But I know even within the municipalities, the local government can develop these public policies towards the payment for the ecosystem services. So they will pay the farmers for the protection of their landscape and for using agroforestry or different kinds of permaculture or family gardening. So whatever is the initiative that you want to do in your local landscape, you can use throughout the payment for the ecosystem services, which is just one of the public policies, but I completely agree that we need, of course, way more public policies related with this subject. So Loic, would you like to say something?
Yeah, maybe one. I was thinking about this book. It's All by Now, No Logo by Naomi Klein. She was telling how, I think it was mining companies, or maybe it was oil companies, and I think it was a country, Bolivia or Peru, where they were doing their activities there, and they were obviously destroying the complete ecosystem on which indigenous people depended upon. But they built schools. So just because that was your questions, right? Sambazon built schools. As such, it doesn't mean anything. It's just the part of the information that these companies want to share with us. But as you said, it's one big commercial, the documentary. We don't hear the real independent voices of the people that are actually impacted and at the bottom of this pyramid, and it's not a really democratic thing. It's these American investors that are coming to, yeah, you also mentioned it before, save these people in Latin America or something, but it's so one-sided again. And I trust the certifications more, which give more of an objective viewpoint. But then, Claudia, you said certification, of course, has the bias or the issue of increasing the price. Yes, that was an interesting point. I wonder how much you could compensate the increase in price by diverting subsidies, for example, from one more polluting source of agriculture to these more sustainable methods. Yeah, we want to end up with this open question to you guys.
So what do you think, Claudia? Would you like to say something?
I didn't understand very well the question. Can you clarify, Loic?
Yes, so you were rightfully pointing to the issues of the certification, which I think give a nice framework and nice rules. Again, these institutions that independently give criteria that the companies need to fulfill, which is way more believable than whatever the company chooses to share in the documentary. But as you said, it drives up the prices. So that's an issue. So my question is, would it be a better solution to use subsidies to reduce those prices while still getting the right certification? And then, of course, certifications, there is still a lot of variation within them. I guess you have way less strict certification, but then you have certifications that take into account and the ecological point of view and the social point of view. I'm thinking of Mikoko Pamoja, which is this mangrove reforestation project that well, I did some research on those forests in Kenya, and it was way more bottom up, way more democratic, because well, they call it community based, but it's more like community involving. It's not completely grassroots, but at least it's way more democratic. There's gatherings of the inhabitants of the village, which are also leading the reforestation and the conservation efforts to direct whatever the company, if you can call it a company, where it's heading to. And then they're certified by Plan Vivo, which is an independent certification, which really takes into account the social aspects. But so my question to you, Claudia, is, could it be an option to reduce these prices, which are obviously indeed a problem, by changing subsidy streams?
Well, the answer is like definitely that's possible, and that's what Europe is doing with the very unsustainable agriculture that exists here, right? They're giving very strong subsidies to reduce the prices and make it very competitive. So if the governments want, they can do it. But for me, the whole question about certification is that they are simply another business model, because they are tackling a market gap, a demand gap. Basically, you have very conscious consumers that want to feel less guilty for the things they're buying, and they are able and they have the power to pay for it, right? Not everybody has this power to do it. So that's why I say in the end, it is constrained to this kind of audience. And in the end, there are also research showing that all these certification schemes have a ceiling, because that drives the prices up. And in the end, the farmers, the income differential is not too substantial to really make it, incentivize the farmers to do it. Because when you don't have to forget that there are a lot of opportunity costs for the farmers to really get certified. Like I work in cocoa, for instance. One of the real goals is to increase the minimum living income of the farmers, and company says, yeah, you don't need to pay more, you just need to increase yields, and then they are going to get it, to have enough income. But that comes at a very high cost that companies are not accounting for. You need labor, and there is no labor there, so you need to use family. But you also want to avoid child labor, right? And then you need to do more fertilizers, so farmers need to invest on that. So there are a lot of things you have to come to be able to meet these certification or other more goals to reduce poverty that are simply impossible. And then when you put everything in numbers, it's not really profitable. But for me, the whole point about this is that we need monitoring and evaluation systems that are open. We need transparency, we need traceability. And this has to be mainstream in the best scenario. It shouldn't be just constrained to the certifications. And there is a whole movement about this, right? But there is no demand, no country, no system demands companies to really show. Nowadays, it is still voluntary. If companies want to show the numbers about where they are sourcing, what are the impacts, how much are they paying, we don't have any system, and we do need this third-party certification, not certification, but monitoring bodies to be able to account for this in a very trustable manner, so we can access to that, right? But this again, this should be in the hands of the government, because like some, I think it was you, like you said before, like not everybody has the time, the money, and the comfort to be able to search for this information. So we should not need to worry about what are we buying. The government should be ensuring that this is done in the right manner, right? So, and just to tell something very curious, in the case of cocoa, for instance, you have many certifications there, because the topic of child labor has been very hot topic. You have fair trade there, and you have also this brand Tony Chocolonely. And I've been talking with them, and I know now they start to collaborate, but there are certain things they are not willing to collaborate. Why? Because they are, in the end, they are brands, and they also need profit. So they want to keep separating these things. No, Tony Chocolonely and no slavery scheme, it's a different thing. Fair trade is a different thing. So no, we are not the same, because they, in the end, they have to perpetuate their business model. It's not completely based on profit, but in the end, like I said at the beginning, is following this same logic of the financial system. So we really have to improve the way we are measuring success, right? Like everything now is measured in terms of profit, and like the documentary said, and this I really like it. We should be measuring other things, that the social benefits and environmental benefits are accounted and also play a role in the competitiveness of a company. But this to make this possible, the governments have to set the right system.
Thank you, Claudia. Daphne, would you like to say something?
Yeah, it's again this naive kind of, for me, I don't know. I've been there before. I've been a very radical activist, environmental activist, and I'm still into the Marine Litter Association in Brazil. We are now, organizing ourselves to restart the pact to investigate the oil spilled in the Northeast. You can't believe, but expired the date and nothing is going to happen. One of the biggest oil spills in the South Hemisphere coast. I don't know if you all know about it. I'm sure you know if you follow a bit environmental issues. But yeah, I believe very much in a more of a bottom-based approach, and in the strength of the social movements, of course, eventually to get into power. But I don't know how you can still think that governments are not linked to the economical powers. And if you believe that the companies only want to profit and is the only, I don't believe. I think there are lots of companies and investors today that are, really pushing the agenda of a more sustainable kind of, the world economic with the big research. They are trying. I think we everybody's trying. We are living here. We want to continue live a good life, breathe good air, have good quality of water, and we don't want people to starve. Even Bill Gates, there is lots of controversy about his actions. He's trying to do something. So yeah, that's it. It's a very complex issue, and I'm glad we are talking about, and we have different points of view and different solutions. But yeah, it's a mix. I wouldn't say it's only just top bottom government laws, regulation, or only, social consume and active, social movements, pushing the agenda for decent conditions. It's all, and the certification. Yeah, I know. I like the movement. I agree that it's another kind of business model, but makes us more close. We get to understand a bit more our our consumerist chains. If you have the time, of course. That's another issue in a very Western kind of view. This again, but yeah, happy to hear. I'm glad young people doing research. I also, reading Naomi Klein, that is also, a very criticized author here in the UK by the socialists and the party movement. So yeah, we had to talk. We are missing this. We kind of shield when someone says something. Oh no, we are shielding the other people's views, and everybody, has something to contribute. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your opinions and point of views as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Daphne. I think it's important that this last subject you brought, that we're not just polarizing the conversation and the subjects we're bringing here. So we're all hearing, sometimes people have very different points of view here on the same subject, and it's okay. We're having this discussion now, and I think it's important that we're having this discussion, not only here, because here we're just discussing a documentary and it was just among friends and co-workers, but we need this in a upper scale too. We need this with the government, we need it with the politicians in different countries and different points of view on politics. So Claudia, please feel free.
I just wanted to give a short reaction because, you know, this is maybe another weakness of scientists. We are very critical, and I don't want to look like here I'm criticizing everything, but I'm just trying to show the nuance of the things. And of course, certification is a very important thing. I fully support it. Why? Because all these leader initiatives, together with the social entrepreneurships, they help to move society into a certain direction. And we need this. Increase our awareness about the consequences of our consumption, and definitely all these initiatives matter. Slowly we are doing the progress. I get the frustration of Greta Thunberg and all the new generations coming about how little the politicians are doing, but these things kind of happen from one day to another. Just look at history, revolutions, everything took time, because people need to, you know, process, see things, get convinced. We are social animals. We are Indian animals. We cannot just shift our way of thinking. Maybe we need to understand better the psychology of us to understand why these things are happening slowly. And in the end, all these changes rely on democratic systems. And we sometimes think that the democracy, I don't think the democracy is structured in a way in the world as a real democracy, because in the end, if you look at the United Nations Security Council, for instance, you have a couple of countries that are very powerful and have the veto power. And this kind of be, if you have democracy in the end, it should be one person, one vote, right? But then you have China and India and all these Eastern countries having the power, but the real powerful in the country in the world don't like that. So in the end, we don't have this kind of representation, right? And I do think that the change, the most meaningful change, has to come from the big corporations. All these that the NGOs are blaming and shaming Shell, all those things. When they decide to make changes, the big thing is going to happen, because they are the biggest producers. They're having the biggest shares, feeding the whole market. All these little initiatives matter, but if one big company decides to really change the supply chain, a lot of things are done. That's why I really believe on the role of the big corporations. And in my PhD, I try to dig deeper into how is the reasoning of them, of the sourcing, what is the sourcing strategies of these companies, why they are doing that. And when you understand the logic of that, then maybe we are able to propose better solutions.
All right, thank you. So I think Julia wants to say something again. Julia, I will, wait a minute, just. Julia, I'll leave it for you. If you want to talk with us, you're welcome.
Hi, hello again.
Yes, welcome back.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking of the thing that I wrote on my comment. I feel like I'm kind of maybe changing topic in a way, but not really. Again, I really agree with Claudia. And I think, yeah, another big point is like, yeah, I agree that changes convincing people, and especially convincing these bigger polluters to change, and yeah, changing the way they do their business, their supply chain, of course. Also, I wonder if from the side of the governments, the one that received, let's say, the services from these big polluters, if you start, yeah, maybe it sounds a bit undemocratic, but like government can tax things, and why, yeah, I know it's difficult probably to implement, but if you start, for example, taxing unsustainable practices, like, you know how much CO2 meat will produce. You can calculate it. We have the knowledge to roughly estimate it. You can tax a product that produces a lot of CO2 to discourage consumption of such products. Therefore, you don't have to ask businesses to change their model. You basically tell them, if you don't change your model, you're going to have to pay. You're going to be disadvantaged in a free market, because then people don't buy your product because it's more expensive. And by doing so, you make things that are polluting more, less economically convenient. So basically to include the ecological and also social damage that a product produces into the economic or monetary cost of that product. In that way, you don't have to convince anyone. It's just simple math. Like, that is non-convenient. And then all these good Samba Zone, etc., that they were promoting themselves so well, then they don't have to. They immediately become the most convenient choice, I would say. And I think that could be maybe another way to go about it, because as much as I like to believe that humanity is full of good people and good intention, at the end of the day, everyone is selfish, and we don't have an understanding of, we don't have a global understanding of things. We can only see as far as our backyard, basically. And when it comes to spending money and making choices, and we make so many important choices on our daily basis. You go grocery, you buy so many things. How can you check, as you said, like there's different things. There's fair trade, there's child labor free products. There's so many labels, you don't know what to trust better or what to trust at all. And also, yeah, I like your example. Yeah, you take an airplane, you can offset your CO2. Yeah, but it's my choice. It shouldn't be my choice. It should be a no-brainer. Like going by airplane damages this much environment, and it's a damage that no matter where it's done, it will affect me, because we live in one planet. So it also solves in a way the transboundary problem of tracking a chain of supply or yeah, managing of what is done after you use the product, or like, I don't know. I wonder how, if if this is considered, or I guess it's difficult, but I also wrote down, I don't think it's too far-fetched in a sense, because if you think of it, some products are already heavily taxed because of the known damage they create to society. For example, alcohol and cigarettes. In some countries, they're really heavily taxed because that there is a direct causation. You consume alcohol, you will get some sort of disease. Therefore, the whole of the society will pay for the cost of your medical treatment. Therefore, you pay upfront by paying a lot of taxes on your product. And the same principle could apply maybe to, yeah, that is my perspective slash question, because I don't really know that much about the topic, so maybe you are more informed. And thank you again.
Thank you, Julia. I'll leave it to Claudia now. She wants to say something.
Yeah, sorry that I'm talking too much. So I'm going to try to be short. I think this thing of taxes I really like the idea, but unfortunately, it's a very unpopular choice for governments, because in the end, what you do, if you are the only government doing that, you are taking away the competitiveness of the companies of your country in the global market. So if not all the governments are in the same line, in the end, nobody's going to do it, right? Because it's not benefiting your profit, the profit of that company. You reduce the competitiveness. So it's very difficult to do. Only in some cases it works. So for instance, like a very simple case, in Indonesia, the government increased the taxes for export of cocoa beans. Why? Because they wanted to capture more value of the cocoa by processing it first, manufacturing first, exporting it, and they increase it. And of course that shake a little bit the market, but in the end, all big companies say, okay, now, but we are being offered another opportunity, which is if we invest in industrial facilities, then maybe we can produce it there. And that's what happened. But you have other examples as well. What happened in France now, like 5 years ago with the yellow vest, the government tried to increase the petrol prices, and for whatever reason they do, in the end, some people didn't agree with that, because you also have to think about, if you increase taxes, you increase prices, and there are some people who are going to complain because they are at the edge of being able to pay for certain things or not. So I don't think it's unfortunately that easy to do. as I say, if we don't have a coalition at a global level, really going into that direction is very difficult, because then you have companies like Unilever did actually with other reasons, but they can do also for this. It's like if a government suddenly wants to put different rules of the game about the taxing and all the payments they require for companies, they just leave. And they went to the UK and they left the Netherlands. So you know why? Because we are used still historically to govern countries with the borders, only at the country level. We are not really thinking about the whole globe, and everything can get displaced somewhere else at the political level, at the environmental level, at the climate level. And it's still, you know, like it feels like our political system is still struggling to really get, okay, but we are a whole system, right? And to put that into practice is more difficult. And nowadays, the only ones having the power to really play with this are the companies, because they can choose wherever they go, right? And then you have certain countries like the Netherlands creating these loopholes. So companies want to put the headquarters there so they can avoid paying taxes by declaring that they have headquarters somewhere else. And you see? So in the end, whoever sees the opportunity takes it. And it's not really synchronized action.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. So I would like to finalize with all of you. If you have any questions to the speakers now, or one of the speakers wants to say something extra that we didn't tackle here on the questions I brought. So this is the final part. We can discuss this. Or otherwise, I have a final question here that I can bring up just for us to end this. So any of the speakers wants to say something about any of the subjects of the documentary? So Daphne?
Yeah, not a very specific comment, but I would like to bring a bit more of hope. And yeah, there are, and only a very short response to Julia. Yeah, of course, there are lots of taxes, there are lots of actions, but for a long time, we are governed by the market, by the capital. So there is a balance too, you know. And if we as people, then I get to the point I want to leave my last words. If we don't believe we have power, I think we have to maybe study more, like even this girl, Greta, you know, if the Swedish teenager, if she didn't believe she could do something, she wouldn't go there. But we have along the history, you people we studying the Amazon, Chico Mendes, you know, what an example we have in Brazil. Like, you know, single people, they change the course of things. So yeah, I I say again, I think I'm looking a bit too optimistic, but I think I believe in the power of the people, and they are very, you know, singular people, and yeah, it's a combination of efforts. But I wouldn't live only for think. I used to believe on that, only in the governments and the regulations and the blah blah blah, the countries deciding, you know. But it's not that simple, actually. And we can do things. We all are doing. We even very simple people starving in the middle of the Amazon can, you know, change the course of big things. So let's not wait for Shell to change, or for Netherlands. You know, let's not bother with that, but because it's always going to happen. People that you take, you know, their power, use their power for their advantage. But we have example of other people too. So yeah, thank you for the lovely hour of chatting and listening to you. It was very, yeah, very enlightening. And yeah, glad to the last minute invitation, and yeah, the opportunity to watch the video too. So yeah, thank you all.
Thank you, Daphne. Thank you for participating with us. I know it was a last minute request and Sarah couldn't participate with us. But feel free also to go into Sarah's work. Sarah works with geoparks, UNESCO Global Geoparks, which is part of the UNESCO framework of heritage. And she created the GeoFood brand, which is one of certification for products come from UNESCO Global Geoparks all over the world. And I'm working with her. We're developing strategies towards certification of these products. So you can look a little bit more into the certification of GeoFood. Just Google it, GeoFood. So thank you, Loic, too. Thank you, Claudia. If you want to say your final words now for this presentation, please feel free.
I don't really have final words. I would love to keep on discussing. I think we can go on for a long time, but it will be out of scope. But it was nice. Thanks, Rafa, to invite me. It's obviously a documentary that we can keep talking about. Strong opinions. Nice to see.
Yeah, I also want to say thank you, Rafa, for the initiative and for really keeping it, even though we had to cancel before. And very exciting. And I also look forward to keeping these discussions open. I think that's what we need, not only between the people who understand and are aware like us, but also try to go beyond us, beyond the comfort zone, and try to spread a message to other people as well. I think this is our role, in line with what Daphne says, right? Not just waiting for changes, because they're going to take time. So we can contribute little by little to this. And yeah, there were many books that were mentioned. So yeah, I'm very curious about recommendations of that. And also I can have some more as well. And yeah, definitely I'm going to follow the work you all are doing, because I think it's very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Loic. Thank you, Claudia. Thank you to all people who are watching us through YouTube or here with Zoom. Daphne, you want to say something more? Oh, no? No? Okay, because she raised her hand.
No, Rafa, no, thank you. It was
Okay.
very nice. Thank you all, Claudia, to everybody. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Thanks for watching the documentary. Thanks to the director and the producers who provided the documentary to us. Thank you to Mary Curry, Brazil. Thanks to Gladson, who helped us organize this event too. Gladson is the coordinator of the Mary Curry Brazilian chapter. And the video will be available after on YouTube. So all of the speakers and people who watch it can share with other people too, the YouTube link, and it will be available forever on the internet, I guess. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.